He has been manager and the director of fuel cell process technology at fuel cell energy with that was up to about years from 2005. And now, as I said, now presently he is at Riyadh. He has about 50 publications to his credit in all the few journals. He has edited about 2 special issues on catalysis today in addition to fuel cell journals. He has delivered large number of keynote lectures at international conferences and then in addition to various invited lectures, about 35 worldwide. He has received various awards, that is from fuel cell energy, in successive years of 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, etc., etc. He has received a certificate of commendation from Council of Science and Industrial Research, CSIR, India. He has also served as in the program committee as a member of American Chemical Society Petroleum Chemistry Division. At Senate, he is secretary for Petroleum Chemistry Division at American Chemical Society. He is a reviewer of various journals in catalysis, applied catalysis, today, etc. It will take too long for me to present all these credentials.
I think it's more than enough. I think. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for a very elaborate discussion about me. But it's in a very, I think first I would like to say thanks to Dr. Muralidhar giving me this as an opportunity, who is my early part of my career as a mentor during my graduate program and a very dear friend. And I also equally thank during my later part of my PhD. I learned a lot while I was short stay in NCL with Dr. Ratnaswamy and Dr. Shivashankar. And that made me to take some of those lessons and then made my career from a synthesis catalysis into an energy sector. For having said this one, I think this is the same forum which I happened to attend 18 years back as a graduate student, and now I'm very pleased to be with a distinguished scientist and then academicians in this area, and part of that one, I think it made me very memorable day for my career. For having said this one, after an excellent talk by Dr. Swan, it made me things more easy for me. I can skip half of my presentation and the background one. But at the same time, I would like to, having at 6 o'clock, having go through 8 plenary talks, it's tough for anybody to sit at this time. I will try my best to get your attention, the very subject which I close to my heart, and then give you some of my last 12 to 15 years experience in this fuel cell area, where is today, and what are the challenges, and what are the opportunities for an academician which we can solve it for, and an industry point, as a fuel cell developer, which I used to wear, and then just change my hat into an oil producer, and still working in the same fuel cell area, and then there's a significant potential opportunities are there, both from a fundamental studies as well as in making it into this fuel cell technology right into the practice. For as you can see in the last, maybe in the 10 years, maybe in the early 90s or late 90s, it is in a decade of all informatic era, and then the 2000 onwards, I think you can see all about talks about environment and energy, and which personally I believe that fuel cell can offer a lot in making this into technology and good for all of us in the world today. With this in a short background, I think I would like to say that before I go, I would like to acknowledge, as I said, that in the last 12 years, 12 years, I was in fuel cell energy. Most of the things which I'm going to talk about, which I happen to go through in fuel cell energy, and some of these things also funded projects from the US UAE, Department of Energy and Department of Defense. And recently, 4 months back, I just changed my fuel cell energy career into Aramco. We're leading the fuel cell work at Aramco right now in Dhahran in Saudi Arabia. As I said, that some of the things aboard, especially the Western world, where most of the transportation used in oil is becoming some of the recent tracks. I just maybe some of the things I'm maybe briefly touched, and already Dr. Song explained in an excellent way of some of this background and other things. But I'll just go through all the types of fuel cells. I'll focus on the fuel cells, but maybe I'll touch base upon some transportation fuel cells more, and later into a distributed fuel cell. And then what are the fuels commercialization status, and what are the challenges and applications, and what are the ethical, may not touch on this fuel processing, which already Dr. Song talked about at length. And I just wanted to maybe mention about this hydrogen production from the infrastructure plans. What are the, as I said, the last, one of the social task by onboard reforming is done, but at the same time, there are some technical challenges in terms of how you can make. Producing the hydrogen is one thing, and how you can put an infrastructure together is another different thing. Jonathan has also written in a competency on the fuel cells, which also talks about all the basic background. But I don't want to talk about this one, already mentioned by Dr. Sang, but just one thing I wanted to mention. I think this fuel cell, as I mentioned, is all the way back into early of the late, in the 1850, 1860s time. But it took more than 100 plus years to take this technology in a practical application in the shipping or ship space. Therefore, as you can see that in 1939, Sir William Grove is the one who has been first looked into this electrochemical devices, and all the way into 1960 to make this into a ship. Every man's space program is being used. But to give it a pinch of what effort is going on right now globally, but here I'm going to talk about only in North America, specifically in the US. If you can take it as in years, it's in a significant amount of money is directly related to how much work is being carried out. And as you can see there, as in a 22% increase in the fiscal year 2007, and it's close to be more than the $2 billion has been allocated by the President Bush initiative for this future gen and then fuel cells, and that includes specifically for the hydrogen infrastructure as well. Therefore, the amount is here is in the federal government as such, but if you can take some of the automobile companies or the fuel cell companies, like in the Europe, I didn't touch about, but Autotopsos, they are very much doing this particular work for a long time. It's been off from a SOFC-based company, and then similarly like that in Asia, a lot of Japanese companies, and therefore everybody, if you account that one, there's a lot of billions of dollars being poured in terms of the research to make this into a reality. Therefore, to give it a sense of how much work is being going on right now in the stage and from the different. I don't want to talk, I think it's basically you can see the conventional, and then for fuel cells you can eliminate some of these things. But one of the very important things that Dr. Sang has already mentioned about is one thing is an efficiency, which is a very important parameter. When you say an efficiency, and when you talk about the conventional power generations, or maybe with the different fuels for a particular size of the fuel cells, you can hardly get around 30% for a distributed microturbine system. But if you go for a high temperature fuel cells, you can go achieve close to 50%, or maybe up to 70% if you combine a turbine attached to that one. Therefore, there is a significant advantage in terms of the efficiency. Efficiency is again gives you how much amount of your fuel is being used. That means you are making a more efficient system. That is one of the major things. And second thing is, as all we know, this is an environmental benefits, both in terms of a SOx or a NOx or a particulates. Anything is in very much lower compared to some of the conventional turbine. This is in a fuel cell system for this SOx or a NOx, but very significant, very insignificant in the emissions wise. Even if you take these emission credits for the different types of energy systems, like a wind power and solar power and the fuel cells we compare, and you have fuel cells has a significantly lower compared to the other systems. And therefore, one of the two, I think this is an ultra low emissions and efficiency of the two drivers. And to give it a perspective of how this thing, the car is in a California Air Resource Board, which is in a distributed generation requirements, which is in a requirement based on 2003 and 4. And if you can see that, basically you are achieving a very low amount of emissions from this one. But this is in numbers which is we got it from actual numbers from the fuel cell energies products. For, I think here is an electrochemical process of different fuel cell systems, which already talked about it. For, I don't want to talk, one thing I wanted to mention about this one is, the high temperature system has a significant advantage compared to a low temperature, but the low temperature is a good technology for a transportation sector. I think in order to do that one, I think basically the fuel cell based on your application. And in electrochemistry, in a fuel cell, we generally go by a VI curve, what we call as a voltage versus a current, and then we see this in different regions of chemistry, the kinetics, diffusion region, and then you have the mass transport. Therefore, theoretically you should get the voltage this one, but in reality you don't get it because of some correlation losses and nurse losses. Therefore, every effort is there how you can make this electrokinetics, make it better and get that voltage closer to what theoretically it's supposed to get it. Therefore, if you look back on especially the cathode kinetics, in the last 20 years, if you go back and see what is the kinetics in the cathode kinetics, and what you see is in today, maybe in the last, there is not much, there is no big dent, I would say, in the development of the cathode kinetics. There is a big role we can play in the cathode catalyst and cathode kinetics, making this in an electrochemical process more effective. For I think basically this poison fuel process related, I don't want to touch basically, and this is a whole system together, how you can put together, because fuel cell is one aspect here, and then there is a components which we call is a balance of the plant, which is in a fuel processor, and you have basically electrical. If you get in a DC power, you may convert into AC, that's called an electrical balance of the plant. Together with a mechanical and electrical balance of the plant with a fuel cell, making the complete system. And this is being true for any type of fuel cell, maybe small, and the requirements may be different. For, I think this fuel process requirements, I don't want to talk about this very much. Basically, I think sulfur is a poison based upon the system, and here this is for the PEM system, even a 10 ppm of carbon monoxide can poison your anode catalyst. So that's why it had to be very ultra pure, otherwise fuel cell will clean it up for you, which is a very cost proposition. For next thing comes is, because of these difficulties of producing an ultra clean fuel, as a last one of the questions asked by the person, I think is basically onboard reforming has been, attention has been gone for the transportation sector. Because of the very important thing is, you cannot meet in a transient conditions, you cannot meet in a startup or in a shutdown or in a cycling, thermal cycling, which makes the system also you need to have a mix in a bulkier on board. Therefore, effort has been shifted into a hydrogen. Therefore, how you can get in a hydrogen? Therefore, basically most of the fuel cell is being right now based upon a PEM-based one, and Ballard appears to be one of the big players in this one, and they are making it ready, this technology, making use of a hydrogen. For the biggest thing, as I mentioned, that it has to be cost effective. You can make hydrogen from natural gas, which is on Topsoe and other players are the pioneers in this one. But the important one is to make it economical. I think the hydrogen cost has to be somewhere around $2 to $3 gasoline per gallon gasoline equivalent. For in general, for a thumb rule is 1 kilogram of hydrogen is equivalent to 1 gallon of gasoline in terms of the energy equivalence wise. Or you can calculate that. For there is at the same time, if you are looking for storage, the requirements are around DOE, Department of Energy requirement is 6.58% as a system capacity. For how you can get this in hydrogen infrastructure elements, there are a lot of things are involved here. You can go to the production, distribution, delivery, and storage. For maybe I don't want to, but one thing is clear from all these discussions from Taksang's earlier presentation. We need to have there is a lot of opportunities there to make a hydrogen technology, production technology, economical technology, which is a focus. Again, I think that's where I think somehow you should make an attention to and put in an effort. If you see what are the requirements of hydrogen globally right now, if you can see it accounted approximately requires 0.5 trillion cubic meter per year. If you you want to get all this hydrogen from a fossil base, like an oil, which equates to around 1.2 billion barrels of oil. Therefore, there is a huge requirement of hydrogen is there already, which is from a petrochemical. And if you go for a hydrogen, therefore there is a significant. For on the right hand side, I think we did some kind of an independent survey and then study where we saw that there is a high potential for an auxiliary power units based upon a solid oxide fuel cell, because most of our trucks or other things is based upon a diesel. Therefore, SOFC can get in a good, and for that you need an onboard reform. I think this is some of the statement in a recent IEA for what is saying we need still some technical breakthroughs and also to make it in a cost-effective manner. And that is a message which I wanted to convey from here. For where do you get from hydrogen? I think Sean talked about it. I think I don't want to mention much about here. Basically water, other fuels. But there is also, you can get it hydrogen from other approaches as well, which I will maybe talk about little bit. Therefore, from the hydrogen wise, I think the challenge is, as I said, that we do have hydrogen to produce it right now commercial. But to make it in a small reformer, to produce it in a 25 kilograms or 100 kilograms per day from the station, which makes something, a technology still to be developed for an economical process way. For what I can see that in the near term versus in the long term, in the next 15 plus 20 years, maybe in a centralized system to go within a hydrogen station and then produce it in a place and then deliver to the hydrogen station. And probably in the long run, you can go for a fuel of the choice based upon a renewable or other choices, and you can go for an on-site generation. That might be the. I said that this is in the current status of hydrogen production cost. And then this is a goal by the next 7 to 8 years. For having said this one, as I said, hydrogen storage is another, which is in a lot of effort is going on. As I said, the hydrogen can be stored in different ways, the pressure, or you can see that in a different. What we are looking is around 4 kilograms of hydrogen to be stored to be made in a size and then in a volume wise. So there is a lot of effort is there in the storage wise. In terms of the materials wise, there are a lot of materials in the hydrogen storage. I think the next thing is, I think we will talk about the fuel cell. As such, in the PEM fuel cells, I just wanted to get a glimpse short of what is an important thing we are looking at is, we can go for durability, where we are in 2003, around 1,000 hours, we can stack it. Around in 2005, in 2000, but you need to be in an economical, again, it has to be in a robust enough, it has to go for 5,000 hours. Therefore, that is one of the criteria. Therefore, there is a lot of effort is going on in this area. And at the same time, as I said, there's the system cost, right? It has to go from way back in 2002, 275, accomplish to $100 plus. And our ultimate goal is to $30 per kilowatt. I think that's another important area. From the fuel cell within the system, there are a lot of major critical component RNAs right now going on, which you can look at it, how you can lower the platinum, which can lower the cost, or maybe you can operate the fuel cell at higher temperatures, your tolerance goes up, or maybe the kinetics, as I said that, and obviously the durability and the cost. So these are the important parameters right now is going, right now is taking place. So there are a lot of demonstrations right in the last 10 years, the buses and the cars by the different automobile developers. And then in the recent in the National Hydrogen Association, the 2 weeks back, there are 12 cars from all the different leading automobile companies. Fuel cell based cars have been demonstrated. That means this shows some significant progress made in the last 5 years. For similarly, a lot of applications, the forklift, and then even the largest delivery system by the Siemens has been done. And therefore, number of demonstrations across the US, I would say both for a PEM or a phosphoric acid based or other fuel cells. There are a number of sponsored programs from the DOE or maybe the fuel cell industries have been demonstrated in US, all across the US. So this is one aspect of PEM and other. I think maybe in the next 5 minutes or so, I will go to a high temperature one. As I said that in the high temperature is good enough for your distributed power. You can say this you can go for a PEM maybe up to 100 kilowatt. Some people are trying beyond that one. A phosphoric acid is up to 200 kilowatt at the range, but in the largest one as demonstrated in the Japan. And the carbonate one, which from an economic point, which is only feasible going from a 300 kilowatt maybe up to 10 megawatt. But in a building block, once you have the scheme, you can go for higher as well. SOFC also can go for a lower in terms of an auxiliary power unit, or maybe in a distributed power for a 1 megawatt systems. For a lot of players like in a Siemens, and I'm going to talk a little bit on that one, including the talks will more heavily in this in SOFC. Just wanted to show some of this in the progress in the commercialization status of this high temperature. The fuel cell energy, which I said that is already offering this commercially today, some of these products, and which is based upon internal reforming, which to give you a benefit. Internal reforming means you take the hydrocarbon, methane, and reform internally, which requires the heat, and your fuel cell reaction produces the heat, for complements each other, making the system more efficient. That's where you are getting the more higher efficiency. Based on this one, there is significant progress has been made in the last 50 years, and in early 2000, it's now commercially offering. And they are offering, I think, the 3 different products. This is one single cell, looks like in a 2 by 4 feet. I think a stack of around 350 or 400 cells makes it a full stack and give you around 300 kilowatt. And basically, they're offering right now is in the 300 kilowatt system, a megawatt system, and a 3 megawatt system, and making it a multi-megawatt by combining all these building blocks. For this particular thing, in the last 5 years, they improved a lot in terms of the reliability and then availability. Basically, you had to be more fuel cells had to be in the rear. That is our perception of it. For it has to be meet our conventional turbines, and over the years made by value engineering and other improvements in the development technology, and your availability or your reliability has went up to close to more than 90%, which is in the vicinity of your turbine systems. Similarly, the cost also went down from the 20,000 way back in the 10 years back, all the way to around 3 to 4,000, which is also a significant breakthrough in the cost reduction as well. There is also the offering in a diesel fuel processor, based upon a diesel going to a 500 kilowatt system, which is basically right now for the defense applications, diesel is a preferred choice. And this is a particular system developed by for the submarines, and which is being demonstrated right now in Philadelphia. I think there is a different other applications are also there. I think I wanted to touch base a solid oxide fuel cell for an auxiliary power unit. In US right now is in a SECA program, which is in a DOE funded program, which is in a 10-year of $1 billion, which goes for different applications, includes houses, APUs, and finally for a future gen by using a coal gas. Therefore, there is a lot of programs by 6 different team players are doing in this particular area, which are the General Electric, your Delphi, Fuel Cell Energy, Acumentrix, Siemens, and Cummins within the US, but also in the Europe, where there are a lot of players like in Rolls-Royce, Holland also. They're all involved in this program, in a 10-year program. They're all already accomplished the phase 1, which is the first 3 years, and met all these significant progress has been made. In the next 3 years, they're going to make in a 10 kilowatt system. Therefore, there is a significant improvements in terms of the SOFC technology-wise, and there are critical components which are of very important in the SOFC area, which I would say these are the important technology. I think, as I said, that a lot of effort is going on by different developers on these areas. Gas seals, which is a very important one. Right now, there is a lot of issues within gas seals. And also the cathode performance. Cathode performance is true for not only for a PEM, it's also true for SOFC, and also the interconnects and the bipolar plates. And obviously the secondary order in the fuel processing and the system design as well. These are the very critical important areas a lot of people are focusing right now. I think I didn't touch base some of the applications which are already commercialized stage by some of the developers. In the interest of the time, other I didn't touch about, but obviously there is a significant progress has been made in the last 10 years, but there is long to be done too, especially in the post-hydrogen area, both in terms of the production as well as the infrastructure, or maybe the hydrogen storage, and including the fuel cell area, reducing the cost, at the the same time the reliability and some of the critical components of this, both for transportation, PEM fuel cells, and then high temperature for the distributor and APU. So there is a lot of, this is an era, I would say, this is an energy, and then there is we are passing through in a very exciting time. I think personally I believe that there's a lot to do, and then whoever is involved, I think there is a lot of challenging. At the same time, it's a very rewarding kind of projects at the end of the day to accomplish. And with this, I think I would like to say thank you again, once again, Dr. Dhar, for giving me this opportunity. I was very pleased to be here, I think, of so many long and with a lot of faces which I'm very familiar with for a number of years back. And then I would like to continue to be in touch with you. And then thank you. And questions, I think I would like to answer.
Thank you very much. Now we can invite a few questions if there are any from the audience.